Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to why the CIA failed to assassinate Julian Assange, and it is by a channel called Moon that I've reacted to a few times recently. I think you've been enjoying the reactions. I mean, they've been getting decent views to be fair, but maybe it's just the exact videos that I watched. But yeah, this is a weird topic because I don't know much about it. All I really know is obviously Julian Assange is, I'm pretty sure he's the guy who, did he create WikiLeaks? And they pretty much leak a lot of government information. And I mean, looking into it, I see it and I'm like, keep doing it. You know what? Get the truth out. But they don't like it, obviously. And yeah, we're gonna see how this all led to happen. And is Julian Assange the one who lives in England, or he lived on? No, he lives in Venezuela. No, that's someone else. There's the one who had lived in England. He lived like in a house that was owned by like Ecuador or Venezuela. It was like a what are they called? Like when they own a tiny like sort of home or something that technically is part of that country, but it's in like London. What are they called? Embassies. That's the one. Is that Julian Assange? I can't remember, but he'll probably explain it through here if it is. And yeah, I mean, this video is almost certain to get demonetized because this whole topic, I mean, yeah, it's just, I'm sure it will. Plus, all reactions from this channel do. So yeah, that's how it is. But I do enjoy reacting to it, and it is really interesting content. And yeah, I mean, I had a few people suggesting me to react to Julian Assange, and now I've got to the point where I can because I saw this video pop up. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you're going to enjoy. Links are in the description to my Patreon if you want to see some more of my reactions. Content on there. Obviously, certain videos I can't post to YouTube whether I react to YouTube videos. They might be too much for YouTube and I have to post them there. True crime is a thing that I can't really post onto YouTube anymore, bar Mr. Ballin, because I don't know, they're alright with him sometimes. But yeah, movie reactions, series reactions, all that good stuff. Links are in the description for those who want to find that. But we're going to jump into this and see why they failed and how they failed, because it's the CIA at the end of the day. They got all this power, so yeah, let's jump into this.
Did you know that the CIA were plotting to assassinate Julian Assange? In 2017, officials at the highest levels of the US government were plotting his demise. And this wasn't just an idea. Specific plans were suggested, diagrammed, and ran through various committees before they reached the top. The scheme was even given the green light by top officials, with months of planning going into the hit. Which begs the question, why was the CIA and multiple other secret intelligence agencies wanting to kill Assange so much that they were willing to break international law in broad daylight? And how did such an unhinged plan get so far in the first place? Well, to understand the true story, we need to understand why they wanted Julian Assange dead so badly. It all began in 1999, when Julian Assange had an idea. Over history, there have been countless schemes of corruption and crimes that never got reported. It was just too risky for the people who knew to leak the information. And today, it's no different. In the US, leaked info can't be used in court if it has been obtained illegally, making even the act of speaking entirely pointless as far as justice is concerned.
That's wild. I mean, I guess it's fair because it stops people from getting hacked and stuff, but still, it's concrete evidence. That is wild. But again, I guess that's just how the justice system is.
And this status quo exists to protect those in power, meaning it was unlikely to see any real institutional change. But what if an organization could do the leaking for the whistleblower whilst keeping their identity anonymous? People had been sending news agencies anonymous packages for years, but Assange was going to streamline this process. All sources would remain anonymous where possible, and they could contact WikiLeaks from around the globe. Anyone, anywhere could speak up about crimes and corruption, completely going against the established media and governments around the world. And the best part about this was that it got around the legal system as well, because the documents published by WikiLeaks weren't illegally obtained by WikiLeaks themselves, and were therefore admissible as evidence. And this was the idea that Julian Assange had in 1999, but it would be years before this finally came to fruition.
WikiLeaks.
However, by 2006, everything was ready. Assange had worked with friends in Iceland to launch the site, making it public around the world. At first, the site wasn't getting much attention, but all of this would change incredibly soon. The very first leaks came as a dribble. A far-right membership list here, a paper trail leading to financial corruption there, but nothing that would stay in the front pages for very long, if at all. Which is why for the first year, WikiLeaks just flew under the radar. But that all changed when WikiLeaks made the brave choice of leaking US government documents. In November of 2007, Assange and WikiLeaks released a document entitled Standard Operating Procedures, which sounds boring until you look at where it's from: Guantanamo Bay, the infamous shadowy prison that has been in the news for many years after allegations of waterboarding, isolation, and other torture methods came out. And WikiLeaks had all but confirmed people's worst fears about Guantanamo Bay. The manual included details on keeping new prisoners in isolation for 2 weeks to soften them up, and an extensive system for deciding which prisoners were allowed basic medical assistance.
How the hell do they get this information? That is wild. How? Like, where do they do they hack into it? Does someone tell them about it? Like, maybe I guess it's through emails and stuff, but I don't know. At the same time, I don't know if emailing and that was really as prominent as it is now back in these times.
And this leak began a long and drawn-out hunt for Assange that's still going on today.
So it started from that. Wow.
WikiLeaks would easily continue without them. Assange was the figurehead behind the site, and the US government had the main enemy in sight. The prospect of WikiLeaks was terrifying to corrupt people in powerful positions. Accountability is hard to find for these sorts of people and organizations, but WikiLeaks promised that everyone could be found out, and at first the US was both powerless and unwilling to do something. They could easily pursue the actual whistleblowers using the Espionage Act, but Assange was protected by international laws. However, many people in the government wanted revenge. People like Hillary Clinton, they wanted Assange behind bars, but they were outnumbered by people who weren't affected. But eventually this position became less and less popular in government, as Assange would go on to publish more and more leaks. And 2 years later, WikiLeaks published nearly 600,000 messages sent by US officials during 9/11. They exposed how the event was used to drum up support for both the war on terror and the grossly authoritarian Patriot Act. But still, this wasn't enough to sway lots of members of government. People still cared about the First Amendment, and taking care of Assange would require breaking too many legal rules. And there were bigger, larger questions about freedom of the press. Assange was tiptoeing the line between dissident and journalist, making his arrest a slippery slope to state-controlled media. But the US weren't making it easy for themselves. There were just too many dark secrets getting leaked. In 2010, WikiLeaks published more info about the war in Iraq, including a video showing a US's helicopter gunning down civilians and a reporter. The worldwide outrage was palpable, and the US hit a new low in public perception. And it only got so much worse when WikiLeaks published thousands of pages of documents exposing the US's war on terror. The final straw came when WikiLeaks supported Edward Snowden, helping him escape from US authorities.
Wait, am I thinking of Edward Snowden then? God, to me, they're both the same person. I can't remember what did Edward Snowden do then? Is he going to explain it?
His war on terror. The final straw came when WikiLeaks supported Edward Snowden, helping him escape from US authorities to Russia and even having people stay with him for months after he arrived. Because just being associated with Snowden put WikiLeaks on the US's radar, adding the massive leaks to.
Let me just see, because I got to just get a little remind. I know who he is and I will remember, but what did he do? Who leaked highly classified information. Okay, so pretty much the same, just I guess someone else who's done the same thing. Alright, I see. Anyone who leaks stuff the US aren't a fan of, and I mean I probably understand that because any other country would be the same, but it is interesting how it didn't start with that, but then they realised that's what gets the most interest, and then they continued doing, or Julian Assange continued focusing on the US, but it's for things that, I mean, it's being leaked, but you see it and you're like, fucking hell, that isn't great.
This, and Assange had a recipe for resentment by the CIA. Until this point, the Obama government hadn't paid much attention.
Is he supported in the US? Is there people who support Julian Assange in the US, or is he widely hated by the general public in the US? Because I assume in the rest of the world, he's probably quite well liked, especially places like Russia and China. But I'd say general places as well, he's probably like relatively well liked. Is that the same in the US? And is it just mainly the government who really don't like him for reasons that, again, I can understand, because you don't want that stuff being leaked? But it is one of those topics that it is wild, you know, it's so weird.
WikiLeaks itself, treating the actual leaks as separate problems. But after Snowden, that all changed. It was open season on WikiLeaks, and the government granted the FBI unrestricted access to warrants and subpoenas for anything related to the website. In fact, they built a file on WikiLeaks and Assange based on conversations with friendly spy networks. The CIA established a separate team called the WikiLeaks team. Their job was to try and find evidence of links between WikiLeaks and hostile foreign powers. There was even pressure made to redefine Assange as an information broker rather than a journalist, a necessary step on the path to prosecution. But the Obama government wasn't about to breach freedom of the press just yet. However, the pressure was mounting, and every new leak and every new embarrassment for the US government led to more pressure on WikiLeaks. During WikiLeaks' early days, Assange was free to travel the world, working on leads for WikiLeaks and building his career. He even won awards in journalism, including the Amnesty International UK Media Award and the Economist Award.
He won the Amnesty International Award, but then that is so contrasting. What the fuck? That is like, he's won one of the awards. I think Amnesty International is like towards like, it's a good thing, right? Amnesty's like, if you get an award for that, it's like you've done something positive. And at the same time, the CIA are about to want to kill you. Not yet, but that's about to happen. That is a big contrast.
world. But in 2010, this high-flying life all came crashing down when Swedish officials released an arrest warrant accusing Assange of grave sexual crimes.
Oh, well, if that's the case, then this is one fucked up individual.
Which was a strange and random accusation. He was then arrested but later broke bail, putting in a request for asylum in Ecuador. But he didn't have a way to get there, forcing Assange onto the doorstep of the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where they would welcome him and he would live for the rest of his life.
Crazy.
Stuck in a small room with a computer, a bed, and that was pretty much it. Inside this embassy, Assange was untouchable by authorities from any other country, and with his computer and an internet connection, he could continue working. Although Assange was now in purgatory, with the British police waiting outside 24/7 if he tried to leave. The only thing he could do was to continue WikiLeaks, and this infuriated the US government. While he was in British custody, there was a chance they could snag him with an extradition request, but now their options were severely limited. There was absolutely no legal way to get Assange anymore, and he could just carry on publishing leaks. So during the next few years, debates within the US government raged on about whether WikiLeaks was indictable under the Espionage Act. Even though in 2013 the Obama government had prohibited it, lots of factions within different government agencies wanted his head. And then WikiLeaks finally gave the left wing of the government a reason to hate him as well, as in 2016, WikiLeaks published leaked messages which implicated the Democrats in a scheme to handicap Bernie Sanders' nomination bid. US intelligence decided that
where
the leak
did they get this, like, all of this stuff, where did they get it from? It's just hacking, right? They just hack into things and find it, but still, and I'm sure it's not just him, it's people from around the world that probably try and hack it into it, but it's crazy.
From a Russian hack. And so getting Assange was now deemed a bipartisan issue, and the pressure to do something about him only grew. And then after Trump won the presidency, partially thanks to this leak, and WikiLeaks destroying his opponent Hillary Clinton, you would only expect him to go easy on Assange. He even said, quote, "I love WikiLeaks" during the campaign.
WikiLeaks! I love WikiLeaks!
Oh wow.
But once he was in office, Trump feigned ignorance, saying it wasn't his thing.
I know nothing about WikiLeaks. It's not my thing.
This was all a political move. The rest of Trump's government hated WikiLeaks and Assange, so he had to distance himself. Plus, he was about to install Mike Pompeo as the new CIA director, and nobody hated Assange more than he did. Which became evident in early 2017, when Mike Pompeo took the stand in Washington to give his first speech as director. And instead of talking about the future or his plans for the CIA in general, he focused on WikiLeaks.
Mate, they go for everyone. That's one of the things that I guess I'm kind of liking from it in a sense. I don't know if I can say that if that's allowed, but it's not just gunning for one side. It seems like it's just going for whoever's, like, whatever. It's just trying to just get the truth out in a sense, you know?
WikiLeaks walks like a hostile intelligence service and talks like a hostile intelligence service.
In his first chance to speak publicly in his new position of power, Pompeo chose to call WikiLeaks a non-state hostile intelligence service, often abetted by state actors like Russia. But why did the US and CIA pivot so quickly from their earlier decision to consider Assange a journalist? Well, WikiLeaks had published the most embarrassing leak to date. In early 2017, WikiLeaks published a treasure trove of documents and code called Vault 7, taken directly from the CIA's most secure databases.
How?
According to WikiLeaks, the vault contained malware, viruses, trojans, weaponized zero-day exploits, malware remote control systems, and associated documentation. This was an international embarrassment for the CIA, seeing their specific hacking unit get hacked themselves. And so this
Wait, the CIA have a hacking unit themselves? Wait, what? God damn.
began stage 2 of the process, kidnapping Assange. But before we continue, I'd like to thank today's
Getting his money, and why I like this is because, like I mentioned, I don't think he gets much money from his YouTube videos, so it is very useful for him getting his money, securing the bag with these ads.
and thanks to Babbel for sponsoring this video. For the CIA, Assange became a top priority. Updates on WikiLeaks were regularly sent to Trump, and intelligence officials begged for a chance to get to crack him. And all of this was encouraged and incited by Mike Pompeo, who still talked about WikiLeaks and Assange at every opportunity possible. Mounting pressure to redefine WikiLeaks eventually worked for the CIA after the Trump administration complied with their demands. And in a conversation with CIA agents after a speech on WikiLeaks, Pompeo told them to figure out a solution and reportedly said, "Nothing's off limits. Don't self-censor yourself. I need operational ideas from you. I'll worry about the lawyers in Washington." And this was exactly what they would do. By mid-2017, the CIA were finding success in their race for intelligence on WikiLeaks. They had built up substantial portraits of its members and were working on possible plans of attack. Measures were suggested like sabotaging their web servers, planting false information to cause division, or even stealing their computers. But because of how secure WikiLeaks was in general, all of these plans were thrown in the bin. Instead, the CIA began to work on a much more insidious, dangerous, and ultimately symbolic move: kidnapping or assassinating Julian Assange. Now obviously this was going to be hard. Assange was still holed up in the Ecuador Ecuadorian embassy in London, as he had been for years. So to get to him, they had to violate 3 countries' sovereignty at once. Now Assange was an Australian citizen. The embassy was in London, but it was technically Ecuadorian soil. But still, Pompeo's reported obsession won through and the CIA began drawing up their plans. First, it was the idea of kidnapping Assange that was at the top level of government meetings. One former agent said a possible plan was to break into the embassy, drag Assange out and bring him to where we want. Or they could simply hand him over to British authorities, who wanted Assange on bail charges and would possibly send him to the US once they were finished. But these ideas were shot down as ridiculous. The British were involved in talks with the CIA as well, but wouldn't turn a blind eye to letting CIA operatives inside the embassy. Clearly, kidnapping is off the table, but the CIA wanted to go further, and so stage 3 was about to commence: assassination. Yahoo News, who leaked the actual conversations and plan made at the CIA, talked about a meeting in mid-2017 between the president and other top officials. During this meeting, Trump asked the CIA whether they could assassinate Assange and other WikiLeaks members, and prompted them to drop some options and plans. Trump would later deny this accusation, but the fact remains that the plans were made, and there were more discussions on whether assassinating Assange could be made legal as well. His earlier designation as a spy helped, but it was still a stretch. Now it's understandable that the lawyers at the CIA weren't making too many objections. There was a good chance lots of them didn't know what was actually going on, and sources within the CIA say, quote, "When Pompeo took over, he cut the lawyers out a lot of things," and it's unknown whether the CIA's head legal counsel had even heard of the plot whilst it was being drawn up. And so, being unburdened by questions about legality, the CIA plowed ahead anyway. Now at the time, Assange was fairly inactive. He'd been stuck in the embassy, completely isolated from the modern world. Although after years of inaction, Assange's personal situation coincidentally began to heat up again at the same time, when Sweden dropped their charges against Assange in May of 2017, citing both a lack of evidence and an inability to prosecute. How much truth the charges had in the first place is still debated, although it was an awfully convenient excuse for the police to pursue him in the first place. And this made escape much more likely, and CIA intelligence indicated a Russian plot to escort Assange out of the embassy, and the memory of Snowden's successful escape must have been fresh in the CIA's minds. And so their operatives ramped up their planning and surveillance of the embassy, as did the British and Russian agents as well. Russian agents even began practicing escape maneuvers in their cars outside, designed to throw off and confuse anyone watching them. One former senior official said, "It got to the point where every human being in a 3-block radius was working for one of the intelligence services, whether they were street sweepers or police officers or security guards." It was clear the Ecuadorian embassy was swarmed with government agents. So who was going to get to Assange first? Well, the CIA wasn't going to let anyone else take him. The time to get him was now, and this is when the CIA put their plans to action. One of these involved waiting for the escape attempt and start a gunfight with the Russian agents, hopefully killing or securing Assange in the process. Another involved crashing a car into the same car Assange took, then grabbing him or putting a bullet in his head. If Assange made it to the plane, the British agreed that they could open fire on the tires or fly a helicopter above it, preventing him from taking off. Friendly European countries could also deny their airspace to the plane if it got airborne, forcing it to land. In any event, a plan to stop Assange leaving was made between British and US intelligence operatives. But this was a last-ditch measure. The CIA was still planning a hit, while Assange was still in the embassy. And Assange had made it clear to friends he believed his room was bugged, having all important conversations in a certain room he believed that was safe. WikiLeaks members also made a deal to hold back the worst information they had from Vault 7 leak, promising to only release it in the event of one of their untimely deaths. And they had a very good reason to be paranoid. The CIA had a man on the inside at the Ecuadorian embassy who was giving them all of the intel on Assange's daily life. Plans were also concocted to poison Assange, perhaps using this inside man. But finally, it looked like the CIA's disregard of legality and hatred for Assange was wearing thin at the White House. Legal representatives from other branches of government, including the president's office, had heard wind of the plot. They shut it down, saying that the fact that it was even considered would harm the US's legal case if they ever did finally get him. And that's ignoring the diplomatic consequences of breaking into a foreign embassy on foreign soil to kill or kidnap a foreign national. It was doomed to fail in the end. Plus, the US had other less provocative plans that they were making headway, and this was stage 4. Over time, they had soured the Ecuadorian government's relationship with Assange. This was only made worse when Assange released damaging info about the Ecuadorian president's involvement in a corruption.
You've gone for your own people protecting you. Well, that's a bit of a... I mean, I respect it, but at the same time, probably not going to work.
Scandal. Ecuador accused Assange of being incredibly hostile and disagreeable, citing problems with his personal hygiene and his mental health, and so they began to restrict his outside visits and his internet access. UN officials who later examined Assange stated he showed signs of, quote, prolonged psychological torture. And then eventually in April of 2019, Ecuador finally gave him up, letting British police arrest and drag him away. And today, Assange is still in the process of appealing extradition to the US, with his case slowly progressing through multiple courts. Now, the US hasn't won yet, but they're very close. soon Assange will be shipped off any day now if the UK courts decide on it, showing that in the end, it was never about stopping WikiLeaks, instead it was about revenge for embarrassing the US. Assange was simply a scapegoat, a figure that helped blow the whistle on the devastating corruption and the lurid crimes of the elite. And even though the CIA did conspire to murder him, the US might well get Assange back in their clutches. The motive of revenge still hasn't changed. The US will also want to set an example to any future whistleblowers as well. Dragging a journalist through years of hell just for associating with them has sent a very clear message. And this is especially significant considering that it's even easier to leak data online today than during WikiLeaks' height. And so with governments so determined on punishing whistleblowers and maintaining their ability to spy on their people, the future looks as grim for Assange as it does for the freedom of the press.
Well, damn. It's a very interesting topic. Remember, kids, the highest award for journalism is getting killed by the CIA. I mean, yeah, it's such a wild topic because there's so many things to it. But like, you look at it and it's like, I mean, I would love someone to do this sort of stuff to the UK, to the English Parliament or whatever, because we all know our governments have horrible things going on and terrible things that they do. And the perspective of the UK, I would love to see them outed and stuff. I would love that, but I mean, obviously, I don't know how that's gonna. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe there's someone who does the stuff for the UK, or maybe is WikiLeaks still going? I don't know. But just leaking this stuff about the UK and stuff, I don't know. I think it would be something that I would just love to see, because I think it's all just a shit show in the UK and stuff like that. And it would just show it for what it is. But at the same time, I guess it's quite dangerous in certain aspects. But breaking international law is CIA's speciality. The saddest part is that there are still people out there that consider these facts as conspiracy. I mean, I don't know much about WikiLeaks, to be honest. I know a bit about it here and there, but I don't know that much about it, so I can't speak about it as if I know much. But based off what I've seen here, it seems like that it was just, I don't know, it was embarrassment and just not wanting more to get out and stuff. But at the same time, I don't know if WikiLeaks is still going. Don't want to search it up because maybe I'll get something on my PC or something, I don't know. But yeah, hopefully enjoy this reaction, and if you want more stuff from this channel, let me know in the comments. Like I said before, the reactions will get demonetized. It's just what it is, because the content that it's on YouTube won't like, and yeah, that is how it is. But hopefully enjoyed, and if you want more stuff like this, let me know, and until next time, like, subscribe, and peace.